Good evening to all of you. Myself, Dr. Naveen Joshi. Welcome to all of you in the Ayush Darpan Journal's Facebook page as well as in the YouTube page. So today we have a guest, Dr. Madan Thangavelu ji. He is a genome biologist in Cambridge, UK, President, International Ayush Valley Foundation, General Secretary, European Ayurveda Association. Today's topic is Ayurveda and Ayush-based immunity, fact or fiction. So without wasting time, I just call to Dr. Madan Thangavelu. आज हमारे साथ डॉक्टर मदन थंगवेलु जी कैम्ब्रिज यूके से लाइव हैं और हमारा आज का जो टॉपिक है वो आयुर्वेदा एंड आयुष बेस्ड इम्यूनिटी फैक्ट और फिक्शन है। रिसेंटली इंडिया में जो भी आयुर्वेद में अभी भारत सरकार ने रिसर्चेस की हैं उसको चैलेंज किया गया है IMA के द्वारा, इंडियन मेडिकल एसोसिएशन के द्वारा, कि जो भी इम्यूनिटी बेस्ड या आयुष बेस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स हैं या प्रोटोकॉल्स हैं इनका डेटा शेयर करिए करके एलोपैथिक डॉक्टर्स की एसोसिएशन ने ये बात क्लेम करी है। डॉक्टर हर्षवर्धन जो हमारे ऑनरेबल हेल्थ मिनिस्टर हैं उन्होंने कहा कि आयुष की मेडिसिन्स कोरोना जैसे इफेक्ट्स, कोरोना जैसी कंडीशंस में को कम करने में बहुत मददगार होती है। तो ऐसे में उनसे डेटा मांगा गया है कि आप डेटा सार्वजनिक करिए। ऐसे में इस लेक्चर का एक महत्व बढ़ जाता है। तो हमारे साथ डॉक्टर मदन थंगवेलु जी बताएंगे कि आयुर्वेद और आयुष बेस्ड इम्यूनिटी की जो भी बात की जा रही है वो क्या फैक्ट्स हैं उसके और क्या वो एक फिक्शन है। तो हम आज ज़्यादा समय न गवाते हुए मैं आमंत्रित करता हूँ, 6 बज गए हैं। सर आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है हमारे इस, और साथ साथ मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन आंसर सेशन ऑल्सो. So anybody who is interested to ask question with Dr. Madan Thangavelu, they can put their question on the chat box. I will ask directly to Dr. Madan Thangavelu. So welcome, sir. Welcome to our program, and it's our pleasure to be present here. Thank you, sir.
Namaskar, Joshi. Thank you so much for having me with you, and it's a delight to be here with Ayush Darpan. अगर हमारी हिंदी थोड़ा सा और कमजोर हो सकती है तो आई वुड हैव टॉक्ड इन हिंदी, मगर
आप मिक्स बोलेंगे सर आप, क्योंकि यहाँ पे हमारे दोनों तरह के हैं, स्टूडेंट्स हैं, डॉक्टर्स हैं, तो आप हिंदी अंग्रेजी दोनों मिला के बोलेंगे तो चलेगा।
बढ़िया जी। पिछले 40 साल से हूँ इंग्लैंड में, बिना प्रैक्टिस हमारी हिंदी थोड़ी कमजोर है, तो अगर आपके इजाजत लेके अंग्रेजी में करूँ तो ठीक रहेगा इसमें।
हाँ बिल्कुल बिल्कुल सर, जरूर।
Thank you, Joshi ji. So Joshi ji has correctly given us the difficulties that we are facing today, and these difficulties have been with us always, a kind of tension in terms of health. And Joshi ji has highlighted the ongoing issues, some items that were written recently by the Indian Medical Association, indicating incomplete understanding of the big scenario, both in terms of policy, both in terms of policy and also general demands. And I hope in the next 30, 40, 45, 50 minutes, I'll be able to address this from all those perspectives. So number one, I don't want to give you any prescriptions, but I want to take you in some directions where you will see why Ayurvedic insights are beneficial and why there might be a lot of fact in what is there in the Ayurvedic systems. And I hope I can leave you with a message that there is something to be considered a little more seriously than most of us will take into consideration right now in terms of Ayurvedic systems. Much of this tension and anxiety that we see today comes from the COVID problems. Now, is COVID the last of such health issues that is going to come out? Certainly not. And if I start with my first slide, you will see why COVID might not be the last one. And there are many more such pathogens waiting to come to us. I hope this, Joshi ji, is my screen visible?
Your screen is visible, sir.
Thank you so much. So This is what we have here in terms of high consequence infectious diseases. And this is a list offered to us by the government, UK government. And you can see two sets of high consequence infectious diseases. And they are either contact or airborne, and the list is up here. India has faced Nipah virus infections in Kerala. We've had some of these avian influenzas. There are many, many more viruses waiting to meet with us in different parts of the world. It is in this kind of environment that we've had Ayush discussions, and the connection with rich concepts. Vyadhikshamatva is a very rich concept. And the comments here are taken from documents published by the Central Council for Research in Ayurveda. And you can see what I have circled here are some aspects of our recommendations that is presented, but presented in a very light way, in that some items are listed, but not explained in great detail. And how to go around this problem. That they have listed some wonderful things, giloy, tulsi, amla. It just says asparagus. There is an error here because the asparagus that they are talking about most likely is shatavari. So there is a bit of laziness in this document. And then it goes on to say food, very too generic, what kind of food, sleep, exercise, not enough specificity, all help in improving Vyadhikshamatva. Now, excellent pointers for those who understand Ayurveda very well, but terms like this are not understood by people who don't know these expressions. This is a difficulty. And this difficulty of not understanding these terms is not only outside India, but also within India. Let us see what else is there in this document. The Ministry of Ayush says that Ayurveda's extensive knowledge base on preventive care derives from concept of Dinacharya and Ritucharya. Now, once again, these are rich concepts, very, very detailed in what they mean, but not familiar to many, to most people in India, not familiar to people in the Ayurvedic systems. They may not be able to explain all these clearly. And the Ministry of Ayush's document just uses a very small set of 6 words here saying seasonal regimes to maintain healthy life. For most people, this is difficult. Then it goes on, it's based on plant science. Not much clarity. This is a difficulty. Now, when we go further into this document, we come into things like this: Ayurvedic immunity promoting measures. It says take Chyawanprash. Diabetic should take sugar-free Chyawanprash. These are all very confusing aspects. And then we come into, during dry cough or sore throat, use pudina and ajwain seeds. And it stops here. If you look at the Unani system, which is one of the Ayush systems, they have a very important formulation called Archaea. Archaea, in fact, contains 3, one additional besides pudina and ajwain, caraway and mint. They also contain another compound here that is mentioned, derived from the camphor tree, kafoor, as it's known in Unani. So there is some reinforcement that could have been done between the different systems of medicine within the Ministry of Ayush, but that hasn't been done. Now, all of this points to a very important message that we were constantly reminded here in Cambridge by Sidney Brenner, no more, but one of our very important scientists. He said the time has arrived for teaching biologists another language. And Sidney left it at that. Sidney gave us the genetic code. He told us how to use model systems like the C. elegans, the nematode for doing experiments. But he left it with this comment saying, teaching biologists another language. And this is what he was trying to emphasize. How does the egg form a whole organism, and how does it live a life? And I have considered this statement for quite some time. And Sydney's words are very precious. He says, in the next 25 years, we're going to have to teach biologists another language. And when I came to this statement discussing with Sydney, what I became clear slowly was that this other language is already there. And that language is none other than Ayurveda. This is my interpretation of Sydney's comments that we need to teach another language. So this brings me to the topic for today, Ayurveda and Ayush-based immunity. Is it a fact or is it all fiction? The larger context in which I want to present this is in terms of wellness and the concept of swasthya. Again, an alien concept to people who do not understand what swasthya is, but that feeling of well-being and how that is described as the basis of good health in our Indian systems. And I want to widen this discussion a little more, and I want to include a few other directions that I feel are very important. And these are the lessons we can learn from the India's systems of medicine, the ancient systems of medicine, not only health, but also the concept of well-being, and how these should inform the future of medicine and health and well-being. And I've phrased this as informing integrative medicine, future global healthcare systems, and medical education and research. So it's a very wide arena that I want to touch, but I want to go into it showing that the confidence that I have doesn't come from just me, but from interaction with a very large number of people who share similar sentiments. And I've listed many of them here. I want to thank all of them. I'm going to run through the list here for your sake. First of all, the Ayush Valley Foundation, based in Shoranur in Kerala. Shoranur is located on the banks of the Bharatapura, the longest river in Kerala. And the Ayush Valley Foundation was set up to promote this concept of using India's ancient health systems for wellness and informing future medicine, healthcare, etc. The heritage of the Ayush Valley Foundation is closely allied to old organization, we think the oldest systematically organized healthcare hospital in Ayurveda, and that's called the Kerala Ayurveda Samajam. It's about 124 years old, and it's been there as a system that upholds the very old traditions. And the Ayush Valley Foundation, I'm very grateful that they are taking on this message and promoting this. I want to thank the Transdisciplinary University here located in Bangalore, where I am connected with. The TDU in short is also very passionate about this link with ancient systems of medicine, and particularly the traditional systems of medicine, the folk medicine systems. I'm the executive secretary of the European Ayurveda Association. We are one of the strong organizations here in Europe, conveying the message of Ayurveda to nations across Europe, not only the 28 countries of the European Union, now 27, but also the 53 countries that come under WHO Europe. I also advise the all-party parliamentary group on Indian traditional sciences in the parliament in UK. This is a unique organization that looks at India's traditional sciences and debates and raises all those points in Parliament in the UK. I'm also connected with the university in Florence, in Italy, not far from the village of Vinci. And Vinci is the village from where Leonardo da Vinci was born. Ancient village, big mines, and a small university there in Florence. I also connect with the Medical University in Graz, one of the few universities in Europe that is teaching Ayurveda to undergraduate medical students. So thanking all of my collaborators, and there are many more here I haven't listed, so apologies to those I haven't listed. I go into my next slide, which is talking about COVID. This is what we were told about COVID very early on into the months of January, February. Figures like this started coming out in many places. The classical descriptions of radiological description, which is a ground glass infiltrate within the lung, clinical symptoms of this kind, and treatment approaches. You can see there are a collection of approaches. Some of them are now understood not to be the best. Shown here, hydroxychloroquine may not be the best for all of these things. Now, what is interesting here is that there is a time course in this whole thing. There's entry of the virus, exposure to the virus, and entry into the body. There's an incubation phase, there's symptomatic phase, early pulmonary phase, and a late pulmonary phase. Now, these are pretty reasonable descriptions of any viral pathogenesis process, and then mapped up here the severity of the illness. There's nothing wrong with this scheme, still holds true. But what is exciting in this scheme is that each of these points, there is an opportunity for this, shown here on the left, the complexity of the immune system to prevent the sequence of the progression. And clearly, people who are entering this early pulmonary phase, late pulmonary phase, are people who are compromised for some aspect of this immune system. Now, this is the interface I want to make with the question here with Ayurveda and Ayush systems. Now, the primary symptom that we see in this condition is a gut symptom. For a lot of people, the gut, the intestine has a problem, and then later it goes into a lung pathology. And if we talk to most Ayurveda Vaidyas, they say, yes, this sounds reasonable because we expect the adhisthana of this condition to be in the mahashrota, in the intestine or the GI tract. And then it will progress into the major part of the body, which is the lung. And there it will cause problems. The connection between the GI tract and the lung is very well understood in neurology. The vagus nerve, which has a connection with the lung, with the GI tract, also innervates the lung and so many other organs of the body. And that logic sounds right. But how do we bring into this the aspect of the immune system? The complexity of the immune system is shown approximately here on the left-hand side in the scheme, that within this is an order. Most times in textbooks, we show this complexity in terms of different cell types and where they are and where they work. But when we come into a specific disease response or response to a pathogen, there is a very ordered reaction in how the immune system works. Is this something, are these two areas, number one, these phases of pathology, and number two, this orderliness that gives rise to, is this something that we can learn a little more about from Ayurvedic systems? Let us go into this. What Joshiji mentioned earlier on while introducing is that there are many examples today in the country where people are offering formulations. This one coming from Pankaj Kasturi in Kerala. It's a very interesting formulation. Most of you Ayurveda people may know about this or may have heard about this and will certainly understand all of these ingredients in this formulation, including two herbal minerals, ingula and haritala. Padma Shri Harindran Nair, who's the founder and managing director of Pankaj Kasturi, he goes on to say that he can bring the viral load down in less than 5 days. and he has a series of clinical trials that are going on. The results look very promising. And there are people now using this and claiming they are free. So here is one evidence. There are much of this was discussed, and this is available on the website of Pampa, a very important organization based in Kerala. That's their website, pampaayu.org. Please do visit this website, and you can listen to this fascinating presentation about the safety and efficacy of these using this compound. Now, Dr. Harinder Nair says he has been using this formulation for at least the last 16 years, since 2004 or thereabouts, and perhaps even before that. And he knows that it is safe, despite the fact that it might have some herbal minerals in there. Very, very fascinating how this works. I suspect there is a model that connects with the bigger pathology that we see, and also the anatomical physiology of the lung. Number two, there are bigger events going on. This is a big event that was organized by the Confederation of Indian Industries, celebrating their 125th anniversary this year, with a stellar collection of speakers here. This was held on the 18th of September. Once again, that the recording of that event is available online. Again, there is another collection of proprietary formulations. I don't know if you can read in here, a compound formulation called IMMUNUTY that contains calamine. Calamine is Andrographis paniculator for all the Ayurveda people. This is a very well-known plant, one of the most bitter plants available, and it points to the importance of a bitter principle in whatever is happening in terms of the curative thing or in terms of promoting immunity. There are several other studies there. There's a case study that's been published from Chennai, from a practitioner in Chennai, and published in the Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, on the first case study for curing a COVID patient with Ayurvedic formulations. There is now evidence from the Siddha medicine people, again, using calamine, which is the Andrographis, as a very important part of their curative process. The Central Institute for Siddha in Tambaram in Chennai now claims they have treated hundreds and hundreds of patients. So I don't want to go into that, but that evidence is waiting there to be analyzed. The entire COVID area has got very, very controversial from the recent happenings, recent developments in America, with President Trump becoming a victim to COVID and claiming that he is back to normal, he's back to his to the White House, and he claims that he was cured of COVID using a formulation that comes from a company called Regeneron. And the costs are all up there in, I think this was yesterday's issue of the Financial Times. It says the Trump administration has already bought Regeneron's initial treatment, 300,000 doses at 450 million. All the costs are all identified. And I think, if my calculations are correct, this so-called treatment should cost about 1,500 per treatment. Many people are cynical about this whole thing, and they say that this is what we call American Ayurveda. And they claim that they borrow this wonderful statement from Ayurvedic Siddhanta, saying Sarvadravyam Panjabhautika. And they say this is the way we interpret Panjabhutik aspects of Adravya. Anyway, we leave it there and move on to other aspects that are being discussed in many parts of the world. And this is a very important story that's coming out of World Health Organization's regional office in Africa. Africa, the president of Madagascar, has been claiming that Artemisia is a plant that can be used for curing, treating, providing immunity for COVID. And there was much controversy about this. His claims were not quite accepted by many people. And it's refreshing to see that WHO Africa now is endorsing a protocol for a phase 3 clinical trial for African herbal medicine for COVID-19. Now, clearly there is some truth there, and it's very, very early news. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. So this connection between herbs and immunity and treatment, we have many, many threads that are going on, and it's wonderful that that we are able to share this so quickly amongst people around the world, all these developments, like in this forum here. I want to take a short detour in my presentation with this little story. And in the story, I want to convey what goes on in terms of traditions, what goes on in terms of paramparas, you know, the long traditions that are held out in many parts of the world, and how it resonates with some of the ideas that, and the concepts and the thinking and the emotions and the sentiments that were shared, that I touched on earlier. Shown here is our Regius, not the current, but one of our Regius professors of physics, physics being the term, old term for medicine. And Professor Keith Peters, in his portrait that is hung outside our clinical school medical library, is a very interesting comment here. Not very clear in this image, but if I move on to the next image, you will see it better. Now, the point I want to make here is Sir Keith Peters is the 25th Regius Professor of Physics. And the Regius Professorship of Physics is one of the oldest professorships in the university here, established in 1540 by Henry VIII. The point I'm making here is the need for a lineage and a tradition to keep alive a certain kind of thinking, to withstand the attacks from different directions, but to keep the tradition going. This tradition we already have in Ayush and Ayurveda system, but somehow we are not recognizing that, and we are not promoting the best aspects of that. And the best aspect of that is what is recorded here at the bottom of Sir Keith Peters' message. And a little more clear here, I put this in words on the slide here. It says, medicine was now to prove her lineage as the mother of natural science and the truth of the saying of Hippocrates, that to know the nature of man, the complexity of man, one must know the nature of all things. Now, for somebody who doesn't know about Ayurveda and what Ayurveda promotes, this might seem valuable insight that we must know the nature of all things. But for somebody, for people who know about Ayurveda, this is the very essence of Ayurveda, that to know the nature of man, we must know the nature of all things. I want to dwell on this a little more, but before I move on to the next slide, this quote is attributed to Sir Thomas Clifford Allbutt, who was the 18th Regius Professor of Physics. And he was professor from 1892 to 1925, a very long period of time. 32 years he was professor. He died as professor. He was still the professor next. Sometimes this time factor is very important. And we are very lucky in Ayurveda that our textbook, Charaka Samhita, the oldest textbook of medicine, which is in its current redaction is over 2,500 years old. The lineage is there, but somehow we are not able to market it better, for want of a better word. Within that text are very important messages for the future. My journey in this detour takes me to a very interesting place in Maryland in America. And the location is the Uniformed Services University. This is in the campus in Bethesda, the same campus as where President Trump was taken to when he said he had COVID. In the Department of Pathology at the Uniformed Services University is a very interesting little web page. It is a memoriam of a gentleman named Radha Maheshwari, who passed away in 2016, and the current vice chair of the Department of Pathology is Professor Barbara Coleman, who was a captain in the Navy, and she is the vice chair and professor of pathology here. Now, if you click on that link, you will see this person, Radha K. Maheshwari. He studied, did a master's degree in BITS Pilani, Birla Institute of Technology and Science Pilani, and did a Ph.D. in Lucknow at the Central Drug Research Institute. And then he completed a postdoc in India, and he came to America in 1981. And in later on, he became full professor of physics of pathology in 1994 at the Uniformed Services University. Now, further into this journey is something very exciting about Professor Radha Maheshwari. I've shown here both the two people I want to talk about very briefly. Radha Maheshwari's comments written and his description provided by Barbara, Professor Barbara, reads like this, that Dr. Maheshwari's research interests included the biology of interferon systems against membrane viruses, among several other things, and the role of interferons and cytokines. And so many other things are written in this wonderful message about Professor Maheshwari by the current professor and vice chair of the department, Barbara. Now, Professor Maheshwari set up a very vibrant team at the military university, at the Uniformed Services University in America. And here is a very fascinating study from October 2004, and this is on Brahma Rasayana. This is not known to many people, that at the university, the military university in America, was an Indian gentleman who was working on Brahma Rasayana. And this study of 2004 is very special because it uses Brahma Rasayana on an experimental mouse model for cancer. And here it says Brahma Rasayana treatment resulted in 25 to 37% decrease in palpable tumor incidence, and a delay of 1 to 2 weeks in tumor occurrence, lower tumor volumes by as much as 14 to 35%, and lung metastasis in comparison to untreated controls. Now, this is fascinating because Brahma Rasayana, described in Ashtanga Hridaya, is a fascinating formulation that seems to, if you read into the long list of ingredients, 40 plus ingredients, you will find that it has within them attributes that can control all these things. The other thing that is in the abstract of this paper by Professor Maheshwari and his team is very fascinating. It says these are inexpensive preparations that have little or non-adverse side effects, with a potential as lead chemopreventative compounds that might prove useful for treatment of disorders, just as human prostate cancer, etc., and go on. And it goes on, the paper goes on to highlight many other things. Now, for me, this was a very touching story because the work on Brahma Rasayana, this is possibly one of the few publications on Brahma Rasayana, and I think one of the best publications in Brahma Rasayana that comes out of an American university. In fact, a military medical school in America, the central medical establishment that is so tightly connected with everything that happens in and around Washington, D.C. And the work was promoted and completed in 2004. I want to spend a few moments here to celebrate this American university and the work that's been going on there. The university was established under the recommendation of the House Committee on Armed Services under the chairmanship of Felix Edward Hibbert, who was the longest standing American congressman from Louisiana. And he served in Congress for a long period, 18 consecutive terms from 1941 to 1977. And he remains the longest serving congressman from Louisiana. Now, these are connections made in some aspect of humanity and the goodwill of human beings across the world. And Edward Herbert goes on to say, and it's presented very proudly in the bottom of his bust there at medical school, he says, "When my services ended, and when I look back, I want most of all to be remembered for the military medical school." So, point one, doesn't matter where all this is happening, wherever research is respected and valued, good things come out. Good people turn up in those places, and their work is respected, their work is cherished and promoted. It's unfortunate that this is not happening in other parts of the world. Much more can happen in India. Now, move to the current context. This is where we are. This is what's happening in India right now. This estimate of 23 million, the current estimate, I suspect, is closer to 50 million. That's moved away from our cities. They were all working in our cities. They're moved away. They've gone back to their villages. What is it that we can have? What is it that we have to offer these people who are having to go back because of the ravages of this tiny little virus? Now, be reminded here the thinking that went on in Professor Maheshwari's mind about interferons and the cytokines, and his thinking and how he could promote this work at the military medical college in America. Now, for these poor people, which is not just for India, for many, many parts of the world, who may not be able to afford the $1,400 intervention that is being promised to cure COVID, which may or may not be a cure for COVID. What is important for these people is something called immunohealth. Can we do something that will boost up their immunity? And can we approach the whole thinking in terms of reactive healthcare and move away from reactive healthcare to proactive healthcare, which is do something so that your robustness remains high and you can withstand all these problems. Some of these points are raised in Prime Minister Modi's comments. Be vocal about local. Be a little more aware of what is happening around you, within you, and let us make a new narrative about this whole thing on proactive health instead of reactive health, which is basically the theme of our discussion today. If we go a little more into detail, now I want to take you through some of the details and how I feel our systems fit the bill, are ideally suited for proactive health care and for boosting immunity. I take you into a very recent presentation, publication that was published on 27th of July, article titled Longitudinal Analysis Revealing Immunological Misfire. And this is a fascinating study. When you look a little more closely into the study, you start to appreciate where modern science shines more light into the heterogeneity, and also what can be done to boost some of these aspects. And I've highlighted two sections from the abstract. which I found very exciting. It says when we come into the looking at how the immune system works, the complexity of the immune system works, that unfortunately in Ayurveda we call as just the immune system without giving it too many of these details. We start to see both the complexity and the way in which this complexity is played out in different individuals. Our current understanding of the immune system says there are 3 types of responses that are approximately called type 1, type 2, and type 3. And they do different things. Different cells are recruited and different cells are utilized in these 3 defense systems. The type 1 approach is against viruses and certain bacteria that infiltrate our cells. Type 2 fights parasites like worms that don't invade cells, that are external to the cells. And type 3 are fungi and bacteria that survive outside the cell. So these are the kind of approximate descriptions. Now, if you look at people with moderate COVID symptoms, then this is what we see. That patients struggling to recover seem to misfire a different kind of immune system. And the commentators use a very interesting term here called picking a lane. It's just like driving on the motorway, where you have many lanes, and when you should be moving away into a slow lane with cars approaching from the back, you are not able to do that. The system is not able to negotiate. System has lost its logic. Why does this happen? Approximately, the scheme would look like this. The complexity of the cells would look like this. Type 1 response, which is what we expect to see for viruses. We see this appearing in individuals with moderate COVID-19. And the wrong response seems to be there in patients with severe COVID-19. Now I want to take a short break here for a moment, just to retrace our path to Ayurveda. What is it that this kind of a scheme can offer Ayurveda? And what is it that Ayurveda can offer a scheme like this? So modern biology, using the best of immunology, the best of cell sorting techniques, have taken apart the immune system and they present it this way in terms of different cell types and when they come up and when they go down and when they don't go down, etc., etc. And they are now correlated with different patient responses. What is it that Ayurveda can offer in this dialogue? I feel there is a lot. This paper is a very early paper, and I wish more discussion will happen amongst our colleagues, Ayurveda colleagues, to help see how the Ayurvedic paradigm can interface with this. This is very, very important because there may be many clues within Ayurveda that can reinforce, that can help individuals who are going down in the severe path to find the correct lane back. There might be something there. And I think this is a very clearly what is offered here from the immunologists, from the cell biologists, is a very specialized bit of knowledge. What Ayurveda has in terms of understanding the immune system and using its own language and grammar might be able to inform many of these schemes here and guide and provide guidance for where we should treat people, maybe with simple herbs that might get them to go back on the right track. When we look at the fine details, this is the experimental design here, that there were individuals who were COVID negative, and there were some who came into hospital for admission with low oxygen, etc., etc. And that is how they classified the different individuals. And the detail in this study is so wonderful that all that is required now is a good dialogue between Ayurveda and modern medicine. And I hope the Ayush Valley, we are in discussions. We will try and enable this dialogue together with the Ayush Darpan Foundation. Hopefully we will have an event where all of you can come, join us and discuss with the modern biology immunologists and the best of Ayurveda in terms of all the modalities, not just the Swastarit people or the people making dravyas, but could possibly also include modalities from the very specialized rasa aushadhi area. There could be big contributions that will help understand simple representations like this, the interleukin-6 response, for instance, between different patients. So very, very clear difference between the severe type and the normal individuals, with the intermediate somewhere in between. I want to add here, there is a study that's going on, an Ayurveda-based study on diabetic patients, which is being done by Vaidyas from Coimbatore, from Ayurveda Pharmacy. We are sorry that we have lost Krishna Kumarji to COVID in the past few weeks, but the study continues. It's been coordinated by researchers and Vaidyas from AVP Coimbatore, and in collaboration with Stanley Medical College in Chennai, in India. So that will be one of our items for our future discussions. Now, the detail that is offered is of this nature, extremely dense information for about 71 different cytokines on the severe patients and the moderate patients. And you can see huge differences between these two. And there are many other aspects that might have to be brought into the story, age of the patient, etc. But what is clear initially is when you have such vast amounts of data that are represented so beautifully, this prepares the ground for better discussion on aspects of Ayush systems, along with modern medicine and modern biology. More recently, this paper that's been published very, very recently, a study that's completed in Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And this is about asking a very important question: why do some people under 50 years of age develop COVID despite not having any so-called well-established underlying conditions? I will come to the underlying conditions in slides to follow. Now, how does all the fine details of this pathology work? Shown here is a schematic that points to that last interface between the lung and the capillaries. If we look at this schematic, this is taken from a paper titled Endothelial Activation and Dysfunction in Influenza Infections. Details were published in 2013. It gives you a clue about how cell biology is disturbed, leading to pathology of the kind that we see. If I take a minute just to take you through this slide, shown here in yellow is that single layer of cells at the far end of the lung, the very bottom, deep end of the lung, the alveolus. And the yellow cells are the epithelial cells, very different in their biology and biochemistry compared to the blue cells shown here, which are the endothelial cells. The schematic is it's a little oversimplified, because when we look at these capillaries, we get another cell type called the pericyte, and the pericytes live around these endothelial cells. They provide some nutrition or protection or other kinds of attributes to keep the capillary function. In Ayurvedic terms, this is very exciting, because this aspect of the lung is something that is so central to the whole concept of prana, the pranavaha shrotas. And there are incredible descriptions in Ayurveda for the health of the pranavaha shrotas and the mulastana of the pranavaha shrotas, very specialized knowledge, even in Ayurveda, and will be completely alien to people to non-Ayurvedic people. The concept of mulastana, of shrotas, and the different shrotas, and the agni in the different shrotas So from an Ayurvedic perspective, this will be seen as compromised Agni somewhere here, and then leading to a compromised function of this little vessel. How does it happen in detail? One can look at this schematic. It provides a little bit, not all of the details, but the approximate simplified scheme would look like this, that the virus is not limited to the alveolus, but it finds its way into infecting the endothelial cells. And it compromises the function here, leading to the immune cells, particularly the neutrophils, to come and recognize damaged cells. They then try and repair these damaged cells. And it leads to a process that is pretty well understood called neutrophil extracellular traps. These neutrophils release certain cellular ingredients. And if you look at it very closely, if you look at that site where this interaction is happening, if you look at it very high magnification, this is what you would see. You would see formation of a very jelly-like structure at the place where neutrophils are trying to heal the endothelial cells. And it leads to what we call nets, the neutrophil extracellular traps. These are very good things in small amounts because they will trap microorganisms and get rid of them from the system. But if this whole process of activation of the endothelial cells and neutrophil activation goes beyond a certain limit, then this leads to the first kind of pathology and leads to other kind of problems. The actor that is not described in my early schematic here is shown in this slide here, and they're called the pulmonary pericytes. Pericytes are these small cells that live outside the capillary, shown here, the endothelial cells, the two sides, capillary, and the pericytes live outside. They do a lot of functions in the lung, and the lung is very rich. The lung's capillary system is very rich for these pericytes. These pericytes, now we know, can be infected by the coronavirus, and they in turn can cause a lot of problems for and convey signals that go into the endothelial cells and cause problems with them. So we know approximately where the biology is today in terms of COVID and in terms of pathophysiology of this virus. Now, what is important to know here is, from an Ayurvedic perspective, each of these little things, each of these individual cells, they have a term for it, and that term is Deha Paramanu. Now, how can we bring Ayurvedic knowledge into understanding the health of each of these cells and what can be done to improve their health? So this is the kind of thinking we would want to bring in. And it seems like there is a lot that is happening when we talk about those bitter compounds. So we talked about Kalameg, and we talked about Guruchi, and we talked about several other bitter plants that are used in our Tikta rasa or Katu rasa, the two rasas that are very important. How do they play into these cells? A lot is known in terms of the receptors for these bitter compounds. Let us see what else we can dwell into. Now, going into the clinical side, this is what we have. We have one of the best studies to date of about approximately 17,000 hospitalized patients in UK. And when we look at the statistics for the patients, about 11,000 patients, and look at the symptoms, we see this typical heterogeneity. Not all patients present with cough or fever or shortness of breath. And there's a whole range of other symptoms that we see in patients. It makes the whole process of understanding pathology very complicated. It makes the diagnosis very complicated, particularly the early stages, very complicated. And the other thing is the collection of comorbidities. We see a huge number of associated problems or possibly problems, underlying problems that aggravates the symptoms and aggravates the mortality associated with this virus. And the commonest comorbidities are cardiac disease, uncomplicated diabetes, pulmonary disease, and asthma. And about 53% of people have some problem within there, which is already compromising their health. This paper is worth studying for all of us who, from the Ayurveda side, want to contribute towards this COVID dialogue. When we look at the fatalities and we look at the hospital statistics, surprising observations that most people who come in are over 45 years of age. People younger than 45 don't normally present to hospital for treatment or wanting for acute care. And the other striking thing, more males, less females. There are clues here which can be unpacked, needs to be unpacked using the logic of modern biology and perhaps even Ayurvedic biology. And only a good dialogue will help us go into this area. The other point I want to highlight in this image is the mortality statistics, which seems to increase with age. Both presentation in hospital with COVID symptoms increases with age. We see more old people, and also the mortality increases with age. Ayurveda has many insights about age and general immunity and whatever they call as bala, whatever that means. But there are important areas where we can dialogue here. And as I mentioned earlier, this figure for, again, about 11,500 patients show the underlying complications. People with cardiac disease seem to be very, very susceptible to this problem. People with diabetes, pulmonary disease, kidney disease, they're all compromised in some way. What is it that Ayurveda can do to inform contemporary healthcare? There is something that is open to Ayurveda. And I think that something is to do with the immune system. It might be to do with the parasites. There is a lot of evidence that the parasites play a very important role in all this. It might be something to do with reshaping the biology of the parasites, the lung, particularly the lung parasites, or the heart parasites. There is a lot of work to be done there to understand these things better. Now, stepping back to about 2004, this was work done by Wim Timmins in the University of Groningen in the Netherlands. And he was the first person to show the different localization of the receptor protein. Everybody is talking about this protein, the H2 protein. And he was the first person to show how it is located at the level of the protein in different cell types. And he found this in various human organs. Now, in 2004, when he published this, the implications were not quite clear. And those implications are starting to be understood better when we come to this new wave, the COVID-19 wave, in terms of the heterogeneity that I talked about earlier. Individuals can have varying levels of expression of this protein in different cells, in different tissues. And depending on where it is more expressed or less expressed, it's a very simplistic kind of argument one can say at present, which is that depending on where the protein is expressed and different levels to which they're expressed, you will see this heterogeneity in the pathology and the symptoms as you see it. Now, the parasite story is very fresh. So recollect again, the parasite are the cells that live on the outside of the small capillaries. And this is a very, very recent paper. I'm still reading and trying to absorb what it has. And the take-home message from this paper is that ACE2 expressing cells may explain why conditions like hypertension, diabetes, and obesity are risk factors for severe COVID-19 symptoms. We are understanding a new perspective of whole organism biology based on the biology of one cell type, the pericyte, based on the, in Ayurvedic terms, based on the biology of one of the Deha Paramanus, the pericyte. We can understand so many aspects of this, of the diversity in pathology, whether Ayurveda can do something, or whether aspects like Brahmarasayana or Chyawanprash actually help reshape the agni of pericytes, is something that is open to all of us as researchers and practitioners. And so there are opportunities there for future research and essential research. So this is something that must happen, that should have happened 6 months ago. Whether we have the capability in India, I don't know. Maybe a way would be to collaborate with our, just like Professor Maheshwari did with the American Military University, and maybe that is the best place to go to reestablish connections. So these are just open ideas left for all of us to think about. I want at this point just switch gears and go back to how this knowledge has been presented to us. And is that style the correct style for the 21st century and beyond? So number one, the fact that we have had all this Ayurvedic knowledge with us for thousands of years. So Charaka Samhita describes Chyawanprash. And Charaka Samhita that we know, the most recent redaction that we have is about 2,500 years old. And it's much older than that. And Chyawanprash appears in these texts. Ashtanga Hridaya talks about Brahmarasayana. It has been around a long time. But there is something missing. And that something missing may be what is needed to make this interface between modern biology and modern medical science and Ayurveda. There might be a richness within Ayurveda that is not available to modern biology because those bridges are not being made. And whose responsibility is that? I leave that as an open question for the moment, but that bridge needs to be made. And this is another example of where we have invaluable knowledge, but it's open only to those who can read the texts. This is the Panchadasha Prakara, the 15 indicators of health and wellness, as offered to us by Nagarjuna, the second Buddha. Nagarjuna lived somewhere around 150 AD, 150 CE, some might say, 150 to about 250 AD. And Nagarjuna's 15 indicators, the Panchadasha Prakara, are fascinating reading. When we look at this, all that is being offered here is exactly what is being elaborated by modern physiology. Timely elimination of body waste. It's pointing to a body clock that needs to function correctly. If any of this is not right, then it's an indication there is something wrong in the system. Proper functioning of our sense organs, eyes, nose, skin, tongue. And these are all indicators of health and well-being. If these are not functioning properly, it might be an indication of a compromised nervous system, and much more. Sleep, which is recommended, sleep, peaceful, tranquil mind, and proper sleep. These are recommendations made in the Ayush document I talked about early in my presentation. It is written very clearly in Nagarjuna's comments, but there it is, not very difficult to decipher and very difficult to understand. I give you two examples of where we can start to see where modern biology touches the heart of some of these ideas, and which is consistent with what Nagarjuna said, and also points to how some of those aspects touch the immune system. And these are two areas, Swasthya and Dinacharya, and Ritusharya, of course, that are taught without the required passion in most of our Ayurveda colleges. And I want to show you in the next few slides how they form the central part of this bridge-making process between Ayurveda and modern biology. Simon published all this work when he was working in Spain at the CNIC, the Cardiovascular Research Center in Madrid. But we are very, very fortunate to have Simon here with us in Cambridge in our Stem Cell Biology Institute. The study shows how hematopoietic stem cells, now remember, hematopoietic stem cells are the stem cells that give rise to the entire lineage of cells in the blood, and that includes the immune cells. So hematopoietic stem cells and how they are regulated by the circadian oscillations. Now, for those who know Ayurveda and can dialogue with Simon, they would say, well, Ayurveda has known about this for the last 5,000 years, and our Ayurvedic texts link all this with aspects of good health. So you are not teaching us anything new. That kind of a position is a position one can take, but it might not be the most perfect way to enable a dialogue with these people. And maybe the way to enable the dialogue that we need for the future might be to point out very simple interventions that we have and say, here are interventions that we have been using for many years or many millennia, and these interventions will impact these aspects of human physiology, these aspects of the hematopoietic lineage. And if you take Brahma Rasayana, then I expect to see an increase in certain T cells or dendritic cells or aspects of dendritic cells, etc., etc. But the key observation made by Simon is very interesting. Now, if I go into the smaller details of this observation by Simon, what is interesting is in this enlarged section of the image, if you look in here closely, you will see three different cell types stained for three different markers. Don't worry about the markers, they are the fine details. And what we can clearly see are three very interestingly located cell types, three cell types that come together that forms the home, what we call the niche, the home where the stem cells sit. And there is a constant discussion and dialogue between all these three cell types. One is the cell type that produces the blood cells. One is the cell type that produces the mesenchymal stem cells that go out and repair damaged tissue. And the third is the autonomic input, nervous signal that comes from outside the body that tells the cells when to go out from the niche, from the bone marrow niche. The bone marrow niche, for those in Ayurveda, would be approximately the Majja Dhatu, and how they go out of these cells and they come out into the bloodstream, go to wherever they need to be, and then return back to the niche. Now, Simon's study uses the skull bone marrow as the example. Now, for most of us, we don't even think about the skull as having a marrow. And this is very important because certain Ayurvedic treatments that are to certain parts of the head might have an input on aspects of that marrow and the stem cells located there. Excuse me. The second aspect that is very important is Ritucharya. This is again study done here in Cambridge by John Todd and his colleagues. John is now in Oxford. And this shows how we might be able to unpack the whole thing about the whole story about human immunity and aspects of seasonal rhythm. I won't go into the details here, but this paper is available at this link for all to study. I'll quickly run through one or two of the figures here, that when we look at the different seasons of the year, starting from January to December, and we follow certain genes, there are certain genes that are not influenced by the seasons, shown up here, these two, and there are certain genes that are highly influenced by the seasons, and they go up during the during summer months, and they go down during the winter months. And what the study showed is that the immune system, these are all, some of these genes play into the immune system, and the immune system is compromised with winters. So as the winter sets in, the immune system is compromised. And this is interesting that these compromises are also correlated with interleukin-6 receptors, C-reactive protein. These are all markers that we use routinely for understanding the immune system. And the seasonal variation is found in these clock genes. So the clock genes is what Simon, in my previous slide, Majidatu and the stem cells, the hematopoietic stem cells that we talked about. The seasons impact some of those genes. So the seasons do play a big part in some aspect of the immune system. Number one, we can surmise from these observations. Number two is that these effects might be much more pronounced in older people. It might be much more pronounced in people with underlying morbidities, comorbidities. Valuable information to have. All of this is consistent with Ayurveda's Dinacharya and Ritucharya thinking. It is very consistent with some of our Vedic aspects of Brahma Muhurt, because that is when the stem cells, the niche is most active. And these are all things that will be refined further if we have a dialogue of this kind with the modern biology people, having understood their papers and encouraging those people to come to us and learn about Ayurveda and Ayush systems and what we have to offer in terms of understanding the immune system. This last image from John Todd's paper on the seasons in the immune system shows that what was observed in the blood cells is also observed in the adipose tissue. There are certain genes that are expressed less during the summer months, some are expressed more, and so on. This biphasic, this two-phased process that we see for genes, is also seen in the adipose tissue. Now, the adipose tissue is crudely translated in Ayurveda using different terms. I won't go into that, but there is a description of adipose tissue which might be equivalent to something in Ayurvedic systems. Yes, it's very controversial how we define these terms, but there is a parallel there, and there can be a good dialogue between Ayurveda and modern biology when it comes to these things. Now, this is where, when we go into the depths of Ayurveda, this is where we see more exciting things for treatment modalities, and where there is immense scope for dialogue in understanding how Ayurveda will crosstalk with modern biology. For many in Ayurveda, they are so familiar with the scheme, they stop to even think that there will be a lot of people, even within Ayurveda, who might not understand the sophistication of this scheme here, of the 6 tastes, the Shadrasa, and how it can influence the 3 doshas, and how this logic is founded on the Panchabhutas and the Vimshati Gunas. I am very sure that if we went into any Ayurvedic college across the country, we will find many places where these fundamentals are still not being explained clearly to the students. And that is unfortunate. I want to highlight this because all of these things take time to build up. As you can see with the image that I showed earlier about the long paramparas that have to be maintained, where we go from the 25th professor of pathology or 25th professor of medicine and so on. We need to build those paramparas. And when we build those paramparas, these kind of details have to be crystal clear to every student in every institution, because it's at the heart of these things that we find the translatability between Ayurvedic concepts and modern biology. Now, before I come to the last part of my talk, I just want to touch on other systems where we need to dialogue with out of the Ayush systems. And here I present the schemes that are better understood, slightly outside Ayurveda, but more into the world of yoga. Now, yoga describes all of these. There are many texts available in yoga, and particularly I want to talk about the chakras and the nadis and how it is understood in the yogic way of thinking and how it matches with this very intricate but a very low-level description. There is much more in the subtle world that is understood in the Vedic sciences and the Indian systems that helps understand the function here shown in the center of the nervous system, but adds much more value to this very simplistic description. There are some discussions that are now going on with our colleagues at the university in Florence that I mentioned about earlier, where we are discussing the subtle aspects of human physiology, which cannot be for which we do not have tools yet to understand. And we are connecting with, particularly with Dr. Sudhir Bagga, who's MD trained in New Delhi and now works in America, has been working in America for many decades. And he is part of this institution in Florence in Italy. And there we want to address all these things. We are very, very fortunate to be connecting with several skilled yoga professionals here in India, many places in Uttarakhand, where Joshiji and where Darpan Foundation is, and also in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh, people who understand the Sanskrit texts so very clearly and so very well. And we hope somewhere in here, we will see the subtle dimensions of the impact on the immune system, not only the seasons, not only the weather. I want to quickly highlight a few things here in this rich schematic that we formed to understand dimensions and measurability of the subtle aspects of human physiology, shown here in the context of COVID-19, and where we have also tried to integrate some aspects of thinking that comes from the Chinese systems of medicine. So not only yoga, but also Ayurveda and Chinese systems of medicine, and where we have taken, inspired by Ayurvedic thinking, where we are looking at the large intestine and the lung. And we are trying to use electrophysiological measurements of something called the meridians, the bioelectrical status of the meridians, both in understanding normal physiology in males and females across different ages, in people suspected with COVID, and people who've come out of COVID and who might require some help. Now, I want to mention a little bit about this aspect. These are now called the post-COVID patients or the long COVID patients. There are a large number that are coming up in many, many countries who are showing all kinds of unexplainable symptoms. And they require a lot of help, maybe simple nutritional help, maybe appropriate rasayana help, maybe Brahma Rasayana is the perfect thing for these people here who come out, the post-COVID people. And here are people who are in the pre-COVID state, who might might be helped greatly by all the formulations that we talked about earlier, Chyawanprash, Guruchi, etc., etc. Now, takes me back to full circle and two papers that have come out just a few days ago on fascinating observations that was part of the slide I mentioned earlier from Karolinska Institute in Sweden, who are partners of the study. One is that autoantibodies against type 1 interferons in patients with life-threatening COVID-19. And remember this was the molecule that Professor Maheshwari was very interested in 2004 or before when he was working on. This was the one that he highlighted, and this was the one where he was trying to bring in Brahmarasayana to help understand. The second thing, we are seeing very important genetic changes, mutations, inborn errors in some patients, very young patients who develop severe COVID. Once again, it fits in this interferon, type 1 interferon pathway. As I come to the last part of my presentation, I want to do a little bit of advertising for our organization, the Ayush Valley Organization Foundation. Our website is here, simple logo and a simple web address, ayushvalley.org. We are having now a series of talks, which the first one was on 4th of October, about the conflicts that go on between modern medicine and Ayurveda. We were so fortunate to have with us Professor Y.K. Gupta, who is the president of All India Institute Bhopal in Jammu and former head of Department of Pharmacology, All India Institute of Medical Science, New Delhi, who was with us, and Eleni from the College of Medicine and Integrated Health in London. This is the college that was set up by Prince Charles here in London. And Eleni gave us some valuable comments about this lack of dialogue and the two sides not quite understanding to the languages. And Dr. Arvind Kulkarni from Vagoli in Pune, who has to date about 14,000 cancer cases that have been either treated or managed with Ayurveda. So all of this is part of our Ayush Heart Talk series. Please join us. The events will happen the first Sunday of every month. As I said, the first one was on the 4th of October. The next one about homeopathy, another one of the Ayush modalities. It will be on the 1st of November. Now, there are other actors within this scheme, the complex scheme of the immune system that is just starting to be understood, microRNAs and how they control the whole process of differentiation. So these are the cells that come out of the bone marrow, the Banjadhatu, they come out into the bloodstream, and then they differentiate into all these types. And microRNAs regulate this. Maybe there are very simple ways in which simple treatments, it could be as little as cow milk, which is rich in some of these microRNAs, that will help develop some of these cell types and improve the immune health of an individual. The difficulty, as I said earlier, is translating this knowledge, Panchadasha Prakara of Nagarjuna, into terminology and experimental design, as shown on the left. There is a way in which it can be done, and it is being done, but that dialogue needs to be more vibrant. This is a difficult dialogue, as highlighted even as early as the late 1800s by this person, John Hewlins Jackson, who was the founder of one of the leading, today, one of the leading neurology journals called The Brain. And John Hewlins Jackson said this, that it takes 50 years to get a bad idea out of medicine and 100 years to get a good one in. As long as this dynamism can be kept alive, and as long as our paramparas can be kept alive, large, long lineages, and as long as we are dialoguing with each other, then we can bring about this change. We can change thinking in every sector of our medical system and the health system. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated recently the Silver Jubilee celebration of the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. And his comments are extremely important. 25 years, he says, which is what Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences is today, is a very small period of time in the scale of things. And Modi ji's comments are extremely inspiring. He says, this is the age to think even bigger and do even better. And that excellence will come out, as he correctly says, in the times to come. So there are people listening to us in our interactions and our presentations and our wishes, and they resonate with that thinking that is going on in New Delhi. I put a few comments here about Karnataka and 30 districts of Karnataka. When you look at this list, This is the impressiveness of the list. 54 medical colleges for a population of 65 million people. Dental colleges, 43 Ayurveda colleges just in Karnataka, Unani colleges, yoga science colleges, homeopathy colleges. Karnataka and Bangalore is known to the world as a center of electronics. Electronic City in Bangalore has companies from around the world. Why not for the health sciences? Why not for the Ayush sciences? This message has been left with the Vice Chancellor of Rajiv Gandhi University Health Sciences. Maybe it'll come to fruition. Now for Joshi ji, my comment is why not for Uttarakhand? Ayush Darpan should
sure, sir.
And promote this for Uttarakhand, because you already have Ayush Ayurveda University in Uttarakhand. So that is a comment. Now, do we have friends in other places? Yes, we do. These are documents prepared by the World Health Organization. It's available at the World Health Organization website for Unani medicine, for Ayurveda, and a document is being prepared for yoga. So things are happening. We have friends in places. And what is interesting is that these documents were funded by the regional government of Lombardy in Italy. And the points they have highlighted in this document are two that I want to highlight here. It's important that policymakers are increasingly able to standardize the training of practitioners. This is very important, and maybe something can be done in this direction. And the second thing is that the benchmarks are important for healthcare options which support citizens in exercising the right to make informed choices, which means the homework that we should be doing is not being done. We are not getting to standard practices, standard products, and these are big areas if we have to scale up, especially if we want to go into understanding and making firm statements. I think there are lessons that for understanding the immune system that comes from Ayurveda, but there is much more that needs to be done if we need to have this dialogue. But keep in mind that we have friends in many places. The other question, how is this possible? A lot of people say, how do you know about 7,000 herbal plants? How do you know about waking up in the morning? We have to do all these complicated experiments before you can get to any understanding of the biology. This is very simple. Our rishis said that it is just the simplicity of day-to-day things. Everything that is around you points to Ayurvedic knowledge. Waking up in the morning, getting sleep, the sunrise, the sunset, the phases of the moon, the full moon, the new moon, etc. They all point to something interesting. And this knowledge is being promoted in locations like the University Grants Commission in New Delhi, Bhushan Patwardhanji, who's at the University of Pune, and is also the vice chair, the co-chair of the University Grants Commission. And his comments are very precious. And they are distilled in a wonderful poster that is available from the authors being Girish Tillu, Gigi Gangadharan, Ashok Vaidya, and Bhushan Patwardhan. These have been great friends, mentors, colleagues in my understanding of Ayurveda. And this poster distills what every student must feel comfortable about, every student who's interested in Ayurveda, understanding the central concept of swasthya and how the different things come together. All of this is very logical. All of this is what Ayurveda is all about. Ayurveda requires you to understand these things, to understand this progress from n equals 1 to n equals 0, or moksha. Ayurveda was made for attaining moksha. Understanding within it are all the concepts that are rich for any person. It is for in any society to learn about and to come and appreciate what Ayurveda means. After all, our body is but a collection of these Deha Paramanus, along with microbes and so many other things that live with us. And to live in balance, our discussions to make these interactions firmer and stronger is happening. This was last year, Indo-European workshop on next generation physiology for healthy lifestyle. And this was held in the Department of Physiology of All India Institute of Medical Science, on the physiology of good health and prevention of non-communicable diseases. So we are not talking about immunity in its simple kind of narrow sense, but in the widest possible sense, as Professor Maheshwari showed with Brahma Rasayana, and possibility of using that for prevention of certain conditions, including cancers. There is a possibility that we might be able to use similar formulations for giving us the ability to prevent non-communicable diseases too. This interaction is between our partners here, the Medical University of Graz, the European Ayurveda Association, the University in Bordeaux, Dijon in France. We welcome all of you, all the listeners who are on this event, to connect with myself and connect with Joshiji so that we can prepare a robust network in taking this forward. We particularly want to hear from people who understand yoga and the nadis and nadi and the chakra systems. We are already in touch with people who understand the Chinese meridian systems. And here, people like Dr. Sudhir Baga and Nandu Goswami at the Medical University in Graz, they have a very good understanding of human physiology. We can bring all this together and we can take it to large fora like the European Health Fora in Gastein in Austria, where big discussions happen every year on this interface between health and democracy and businesses, and where the future is. People are becoming more and more sensitive about these things and about the missing narratives in healthcare. This was a meeting in February this year in Austria, in Innsbruck, where we were talking about health, wellness, and well-being narratives. And we felt that there is something missing. The missing bit is about health and well-being and wellness. And what was needed is some more discussion about the science and the grammar and the logic of health promotion, health maintenance, disease prevention, and perhaps even new cures. Are these lessons and voices and messages and wishes being heard in other places? Yes, we are very, very happy to say that the European Union is thinking about this in such an integrated way that is appreciated by the Vedic sciences and Ayurveda. Using their language, they use soil health and food. We talk about health. Food is health and food is medicine. They have cancer. There is room here for dialoguing with them about cancer. And societal transformation, we talk about meditation here and keeping a clean mind, pollution of the oceans and cities, how to live correctly. These are all themes that are being held in the next framework program that starts January 2021 for 6 years. I hope we will be able to have vibrant dialogues with these policymakers. The next thing, are there any events promoting this? Yes, this is an event being held in Prague, scheduled for June next year, 11th to 13th in June. I want to put here a note about the website, worldwhc2020prague.com, and it will be the World Health Congress, and where we will have a platform to bring all our knowledge into a slightly larger forum, where we talk about other systems of medicine, how it benefits health, other systems of healing, chakras and nadis and prana healing and all these things that are generally not given much time and space in modern biology, but we are trying to understand all that and we are trying to bring it out into large fora. In February next year in London, for those who want to come and join us, the European Congress for Integrative Medicine. It's another area where there is a lot of interaction that's going on between modern medicine and the ancient systems. The website here for the Congress is ecimcongress.com. So these are big events that are going on. And I want to wind down here as we come to the very end of the presentation. Take us back to the work of the military university, the Military Medical College, or the Uniformed Services University in Bethesda, in Maryland. And I want to come back to the person who I mentioned earlier, Professor Maheshwari, and to Barbara, and just pick a few comments here, reflections about Radha Maheshwari. and from Professor Barbara, the Vice Chair of the department. For me, this was a very touching memorial, and it's so well documented, so well presented at this prestigious institution at the heart of the establishment in America. And it conveys a certain spirit, which is the spirit I think our sciences must convey to people in other lands. And this spirit is given to us so eloquently by Professor Barbara. She says we could talk for hours about Radha's accomplishments as a scientist, professor, mentor, his global perspectives. But what is important to us is who Radha was. And Radha was a true gentleman. Barbara says, always a true, gentle man. He was kind. He always put others first. He was more excited about how many people he could bring together to collaborate on a grant instead of the money that was associated. He was not interested on the actual dollars in the grant, rather loved people. He loved to bring out the best in everyone. He loved his work. And then goes on to say, he was a very spiritual man. We had many conversations about faith. He always dwelled on the similarities in our beliefs, the Indian beliefs and the American beliefs, and rather truly believed in always doing good, being generous, and in being positive. The most important thing, she goes on to say, there's so much more on the page, but I like this sentence very much. He would not dwell on the negative aspects of anyone, but strive to bring out good to any situation. Now, I couldn't think of anything better than to finish off here with these fine words. And I wish to dedicate this whole presentation to Radha Maheshwari, who is not with us, but who has left such a strong impression in very open ways, in very firm ways, with minds at the heart of the American establishments. So I finish off with those words, and there we are. Thank you so much for having me with you people. And thank you, Joshiji. I've taken a little more than what I said I would take, 60 minutes. We are into 90 minutes, and I'm here to be beaten by you. If you
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's a very nice session. And I hope that if anybody have any questions, they can ask. I hope that, I think that if you have any question, you can ask with Dr. Madan Thangavelu.
Joshiji and Sanjay Chajad have been very kind. They are used to holding 9-10 hour sessions. So these guys have high stamina. Mine is a very small presentation. So I'm happy to take questions. Looking.
So anybody, if have any questions related with this session, they can directly ask. Gayatri Puranik is saying, incredible session, Madanji. Thank you very much. And Vandana Patek is also admiring. There is one question from, I think, Jagveer Rawatji. Jagveer Rawatji, are you here? So you can directly ask your question with Dr. Madan Thangavelu. I will just unmute you. You are asking so many questions in the chat box. I hope that you are, yes, here. So you can directly ask your question with Dr. Madan Thangavelu. Yeah. Jagveer Rawatji.
Jagveerji, namaskar.
Yeah, namaskar.
Namaskar.
That's a very illuminating alignment on my discipline of immunology.
I hope you agree with some of these things. There is a wonderful study on use of Brahma Rasayana to improve immunity of chickens. So I will send you the reference to that one. Brahma Rasayana is such a powerful Rasayana. It can be used everywhere, it seems. It seems to touch so many aspects. Wherever there is life, it seems to help. So, sorry, Jagveerji, please, your question.
As well as the origin of the cells, the bone marrow level issues which have been raised, they may come for experimentation, particularly in our labs in Haryana.
Jagveerji, yes, thank you. I feel there is room for a lot of dialogue between the veterinary and animal sciences and Ayurveda, and from there with modern biology and modern medicine, because you people handle so many animals, large animals, small animals, experimental animals, and I feel that link needs to be crystallized, and we don't see that in India. I feel there is a need to bring Ayush systems into veterinary universities, veterinary colleges, and animal science colleges. And it must become, Ayush systems must become a part of the veterinary animal science curriculum. And this is a message I want to leave with you. I know we've touched on it, we've discussed about it briefly. There may be many other people in the audience who might want to comment on this. I know people who use rasayanas, rasadravyas. So let me give you a few examples. People who use sukshma triphala, which is produced by in Pune by some of the companies. One of the companies, which is the old company set up by Mama Gokhale in Pune. Mama Gokhale being the founding director of the Institute for Postgraduate Studies in Jamnagar. Now, I know people who use Sukshma Triphala in small animals, in dogs, and get incredible responses. And it gives certain responses that are much more effective, much more long-lasting than antibiotics. And I feel such thinking must come into the animal science, veterinary science, animal husbandry area, where particularly the issue about antibiotic AMR, antibiotic microbial resistance is becoming such a big issue. Many aspects of mastitis in cows and cattle can be easily controlled with Ayurvedic formulations, and you know about it well. And I feel Ayush Darpan and all of us must come together in a small meeting to dialogue this, so that all of us can have our thoughts presented here, so that they can be taken up in other fora, particularly in New Delhi and other state-level policy-making fora. These are very important things, and I hope Joshi-ji will make a note of this and bring us all together again just to discuss those.
Sure, sir, definitely. Definitely, sir.
It's very important.
Yeah, I invite Venkata and Joshi for a remark on this, on the lecture of Dr. Madan Thangavelu. Vandana Pathak ji, you are also here. Yeah.
I'm very much thankful to Naveen ji for this great opportunity, because Dr. Madan ji is well known with all parliamentary party group in UK, and several meetings with Dr. Kolako here as a consultant in rheumatology. And they are the ones, and I'm teaching with the College of Ayurveda along with Middlesex University in London for Ayurveda. And then we are very much interested to derive some sort of protocol for this research gut-brain axis with the guidelines of Dr. Professor Kolako over here. And I'm very much congratulating Dr. Madanji for this wonderful integration at global level for the ancient wisdom to prosper and integrate for the wellness and beyond to the mankind and benefit. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your wonderful.
Joshi-ji, thank you for joining us. I know you're back in India now. I don't know how you managed to get into India out of COVID UK, but you are there
Absolutely,
in India.
Sir, absolutely.
Thank you for your comments.
Dr. Vandana ji, do you like to comment? Dr. Vandana Pathak? I think that, yes. Your mic is working? Yeah. I think there is problem in your audio. Your audio is not clear.
Vandana ji, namaskar. Namaste. Your audio is not.
आपका ऑडियो नहीं आ रहा है, थोड़ा सा ऑडियो में प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है. एनीवे, आपकी भावनाएं हमने यहाँ से पहुँचा दी है जी. वो आपके चैट बॉक्स. हाँ, अब आ रही है जी 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 बोलिए जी अब ठीक है।
नमस्कार
Dr.
जी।
Madan, sir, this was an excellent session. And we here in India, the private practitioners actually need a lot of guidance regarding the research methodology, so that we can do a lot of work in regarding this immunity, because there are so many people who are working, but they do not know how to present their cases. So it would be very nice if Dr. Naveen Joshi sir, with you all experts, have some sessions on research methodology in Ayurveda, so that private practitioners can connect who are not associated with any institution. Thank you, and your
Thank you,
session
ma'am.
was, and congratulations to
Thank
Ayush
you.
Darpan as well.
Thank you, Dr.
So-
Vandana ji. Definitely, we will try to put the research methodology subject to aware our practitioners as well as our students. Yes, Dr. Madan sir.
No, I think, Vandanaji, thank you so much for raising this point, because I feel, let me give you one simple example. We talk about Panchakarma as a unique modality. There is no other system of medicine in the world that has such a sophisticated approach for managing many aspects of the human physiology, human health and disease in such a comprehensive and such an elegant way. And Panchakarma is unique in its the karmas and how it affects the human body. Now, we do thousands of Panchakarmas every day in India. But when we talk about evidence and collecting this data, nobody has this data. Every medical college, Ayurveda college, must have at least a 60 or 100 bed hospital. And in each of these institutions, they are doing Panchakarmas every day. Hundreds are happening across the country. We cannot capture this data. We haven't captured this data. And all this precious data is going away from our hands on a daily basis. What is the problem? So we request people like yourselves to connect with excellent organizers like Joshi ji, because Joshi ji has a skill to bring people together. Ayush Darpan and our organization in Kerala, the Ayush Valley Foundation in Shornur, will join in with Joshi ji, will join in with whoever wants to join this initiative to start to document these results. We will be more than happy to help you with whatever questions you have. Please join us. Please, I've requested Joshi ji to partner with the Ayush Valley Foundation. We want to have these foundations because there are linguistic barriers between different parts of the country. So Joshi ji has set up one that services very nicely the Hindi-speaking part. So we can have programs in Hindi. I fortunately can follow Hindi. I can talk in Hindi. I can understand Hindi. But there are many people in the south of India who may not. And so we have crafted these institutions where we can come, but collectively, from Jaipur, we can bring National Institute of Ayurveda. From Delhi, we can bring All India Institute of Ayurveda. From Jammu, we can bring people. And we come together as a force. And as Jagveer ji says, we'll do it not only for practitioners, but we will also bring new people into this study. The Ayush Valley Foundation in Kerala is inspired by the work of Hast Ayurveda experts. In Kerala, there is a tradition of looking after elephants using Ayurvedic procedures. And we have that knowledge. Why can't we learn from that? And this collective effort is very important. Hast Ayurveda, or Ayurveda for horses. In Rajasthan, in Jaipur, there is a lot of old textbooks about Ayurveda for large animals, for horses. What is it that we can do to bring all this together into one common? And Joshi ji, let us put our minds together. Offline, we will have a discussion.
Sure, sir. Sure, definitely, sir.
Let us see how.
I welcome your proposal, sir. We want to collaborate with Ayush Valley Foundation, and surely we will put the Keralian experts as well as North Indian experts as experts from abroad in the same platform for promoting the research and other activities. And as well as Vandana Pathak also explained that the private practitioners and not so much knowledge about the research. So we promote this because the thing that is lacking in the Ayurveda is that people tell that the research is not here. So there is one question in YouTube. Can I ask with you?
Please.
There is a question from Raki, Germany. I think why the Ayush mandate the well-known carcinogenic chemicals like sodium benzoate in most of the liquid products? Is lobby of pharma industry so strong that no one has power to oppose such mandates? There is a question some from Germany is asking. Yeah.
Thank you, Yoshiji. This issue of sodium benzoate is a complicated one because one, it is a health hazard. Particularly for women, it affects bone health. And we must find a way to stop using this in our formulations. And how to do this? We need to have a discussion. We need to have a discussion to revisit when this addition of sodium benzoate came into our Ayush systems. And this is a very important question. So we need to track back and find out who brought this into our Ayush systems and how can we find alternatives for this. Now, I can see the argument from the people who want to have preservatives would be similar to the lines of what is in the food industry. And I think even in the food industry, this use of unwanted preservatives must stop. Now, what this means is a major change in policy making. And I don't know how we will do this, but I agree completely. I take the question about sodium benzoate, and I love this question that it's coming from Germany, because Germany is one of the most, or is the most Ayush-ready country outside India. Germany has a new organization called Ayurveda. It's the umbrella organization of all the German Ayurveda-Ayush organizations. Please do, the Ayurveda organization, please do visit their website. You will see the number of organizations that are working with Ayurveda. And there is a problem there. I think this is very correctly highlighted. Once again, I think a collective effort, if we sit down and discuss this together, Joshiji, initially, and with a small number of people from Confederation of Indian Industries and the large Ayurveda houses, the industrial houses, then we might come to a good solution. And I can assure you to the person who's asked this question from Germany that we will take this matter up and we will find a way to get rid of sodium benzoate. It has a terrible taste, and it also makes it compromises some aspects of bone health in some individuals. So we will take this up. I don't know if that answers your question, Joshiji. I put the responsibility a little bit on both.
And last question I want to take from the Facebook, Agastya Amita Vishwanath Kulkarni. Agastya Amita Vishwanath Kulkarni is asking that how effective is methylene blue in COVID? And do we have an alternative to in Ayurveda? He's asking, he's putting his question in Facebook. So I'm just presenting in front of you.
My comment here is to study very closely and in great detail all the evidence that is coming up on COVID-19. And when we look at much of the evidence that's coming up, we see bitter taste, bitter and astringent, katu and tikta rasa coming into play here. What is special about katu tikta rasa? From Ayurvedic perspective, it has a Panjabhutic connection, and it explains how it can rebalance the 5 bhutas in the system. In terms of modern biology, in terms of the modern biology's understanding of the immune system and receptors, taste receptors, bitter and astringent are very important tastes that have receptors across the body in different locations, in different parts of the body. And they play a very critical part in physiology. So why talk only about methylene blue when you have very simple interventions like bitter compounds, simple Karela might help you, might help improve certain aspects of physiology. If you give me 1 minute, Joshiji, just to say how bitter receptors act in terms of lung function. If we look at the lung as we go from the top down to the deep end and as we come up, at the very end of the alveoli are stem cells, the pulmonary stem cells, and they produce all the cells that come further up into the lung. And as the cells mature and as you come further up into the lung, you will find certain cells called the ciliated cells. They are constantly beating. And they are pushing things from inside the lung up to the bronchus and up into the upper part of the lung and out of the body. The moment you take bitter compounds, the beating frequency of these ciliated cells, these cilia start to move faster. Such a simple intervention. And as they start beating faster, they push out more of the unwanted material that is trying to go deep into the lung. They push them out of the lung. And then you can clear them out on a daily basis using, just clear your throat using a simple process. The system I use routinely, so here is another reply. Use simple oil pulling. I take 2 tablespoons of, I use routine cooking oil. Here in my kitchen, I have this. And I take 2 spoons of this in my mouth for about 20 minutes. I just flush it in my mouth and then spit it out. The moment I do this, I can feel a lot of mucus wanting to come out also. I just clear it out. Yes, it doesn't sound very nice, but it clears out the mucus that comes up from the lung into the throat. And that seems to provide a certain kind of health to that whole activity of the lung. And these are very, very simple things that we can do. And these are described in wonderful books. I showed a slide with Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya, who was there in one of the slides. She has one of the bestsellers in the Amazon India book list on her book called Everyday Ayurveda. And it talks about dinacharya, simple things you can do on a daily basis that helps improve your immunity. Why go for strange things, chemically synthesized things like methylene blue, when you can have so many simple formulations that you can use that are routinely available with you in every kitchen in every house in the world.
So thank you, Madan Thangavelu ji, Dr. Madan Thangavelu ji. I think 2 hours and 6 minute session uninterrupted, and so many questions. Participants asking in Facebook, YouTube, as well as the Zoom. So everybody is now satisfied. I hope that Amit Kulkarni ji, any book which decodes Veda with reference to Ayurveda, Vanaspati Shastra, Vrukshakta, Bilva, Sushruta. Why is that they are talking about Bilva and Sushruta? This is your question. I think that yes, you can ask directly with Dr. Madan Thangavelu and other Ayurveda people there. So I hope that we have to conclude this session as 2 hours already there. So in future, we again come with the next lecture, as well as we were very much interested to collaborate with the Ayush Valley Foundation, and definitely in future we will plan similar lectures in collaborative way to upgrade your knowledge and enhance your knowledge. So Thangavelu sir, it's thank you, and it's our pleasure to invite in this platform Ayush Darpan, our pleasure. बहुत सारे लोगों ने इस प्रोग्राम को देखा है, हिंदी में भी और अंग्रेजी में भी, वो समझ रहे हैं, वो कमेंट्स कर रहे हैं, वो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, डॉक्टर्स हैं. तो रिसर्च की बात हो रही है और IMA ने जो बातें कही है, तो आपने आयुर्वेद का स्ट्रॉन्ग सपोर्ट किया, जैसा कि आपने देखा, और एविडेंस भी इसमें दिए. तो हम यही चाहेंगे कि आप लोग जो है इस पर भरोसा करें और रिसर्च को प्रमोट करें और अपनी बातों को सही तरीके से डॉक्यूमेंट रूप में सामने लाएं, और रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी कैसी होनी चाहिए इस पे जरा सा जरूर विचार करें. जैसा कि अभी डॉक्टर वंदना ने कहा कि हमारे प्राइवेट प्रैक्टिशनर्स को थोड़ा सा रिसर्च का तरीका नहीं है, तो हम प्लान करेंगे डॉक्टर वंदना जी आगे रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी पे कुछ ऐसी चीजें बता सकें. तो सर अच्छा, अमित कुलकर्णी जी, आप फार्मर हैं नॉर्थ कर्नाटका से, यू आर फार्मर. ओके ओके, क्या सर आप जवाब देना चाहेंगे इनके प्रश्न का? इन्होंने कुछ पूछा है, तो ये भी नाराज ना हो.
पूछो जी.
ये इन्होंने पूछा है कि इनका लास्ट सवाल है, कुछ इन्होंने किताबों के बारे में पूछा है. मैं इनका प्रश्न आपके सामने ले लेता हूँ. चेक्स चैट बॉक्स में दिख रहा है। कोई ऐसी किताब जो वेद आयुर्वेद के रेफरेंस में वेद से आई हो, या वनस्पति सत्व वृक्षोत्व बिल्व। सर मैं अमित कुलकर्णी जी, मैं आपको अनम्यूट कर देता हूं, आप सीधे अपना प्रश्न डायरेक्ट ही रखें ना, वो ज्यादा अच्छा रहेगा। मैं क्यों पढ़ूं, आप सीधे प्रश्न रखिए जी, अपना परिचय दीजिए।
नमस्कार। नमस्कार, मेरा नाम अमित कुलकर्णी है और नवीन जी को मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और आभार व्यक्त करता हूं जो इस मुहिम में मुझ जैसे किसानों को भी पार्टिसिपेट करने का अवसर दिया है। और मैं कर्नाटका से हूं और हिंदी थोड़ा कमजोर है, क्षमा कीजिएगा। एंड माय क्विक क्वेश्चन टू मदन जी, सिंस इट has been long time and I've been watching Dr. Naveen's programs every now and then, and I think I'm learning many things. And out of his discussion, I got an interesting idea that why is that generation of us or similar to us, young people are going away from Rigveda, Yajurveda, Sama and Atharva, when there is so much of knowledge kept untouched. Why can't we take an initiative to explore the possibilities which are hidden in Ayurveda, hidden in all of these Vedas, and bring such interesting books? Or rather, I have not explored myself to get into all of that. The question lies is, which are such books you would suggest so that I can go and refer? Anyway, I have a Shruta Samhita and I'm trying to read and understand, but there are so much of Sanskrit text which I can't understand. I'm trying to learn Sanskrit also. But in the meantime, your suggestions will help me to accelerate the learning curve. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Amit ji. Now, thank you for asking this very important question about the deep knowledge in the Vedas and how we are not spending time enough to understand this. Now, you are very lucky in Karnataka because I don't know, Amit ji, how far are you from Belur Mutt? Are you somewhere near Belur? If you are near Belur, then that is the start point, because that is one of the 4 mutts created by Adi Shankara. And Belur Mutt is a good place to go to start to understand, to engage with the scholars there. There are many, many scholars in Belur Mutt, very qualified in not only Advaita Vedanta, but also understanding all the other Vedas and the darshanas. So that would be a good place to start. And once you connect with 1 or 2 teachers, I say this specifically because you are in Karnataka. Number 2, you should connect with 1 or 2 of the Ayurveda colleges in Karnataka. I'm very happy to put you in touch with especially the SDM institutions, SDM Hassan, SDM Udupi, 2 places which are very, very well structured institutions with a lot of scholarship in Ayurveda and this interface between Samhitas and Ayurvedic knowledge. So all your answers, if you wanted to meet face to face, you can meet with people there. Joshi ji or myself, we can introduce you to all the scholars there in these 2 places. I don't know too many people, or not anybody in Belur Mutt, but the people from Belur Mutt are also patrons for the college the Ayurveda college associated with the Ayush Valley Foundation. PNNM Ayurveda College is connected very closely with Belur Mutt. So we have connections and we can easily put you in touch. Please get my email address from Joshi ji or send me your details and we can continue the discussion. I'm more than happy to help you with all this. In Kerala, if you come, you can even visit the place, the 4 different schools that were set up by Adi Shankara long time back to revive the 4 Vedas. And around the 4 sides of the Shiva temple in Thrissur are the 4 schools. one is remaining now that deals with many of these things. So there are many things across the country. Yes, it's a little bit of effort to identify the people and to connect with them. I agree with you there, but we are happy to more than help you. Myself, more than happy. Joshiji will be able to connect us, and please let us answer your question more fully in offline.
So I think Amit Kulkarni ji, you got your answer. आपको जवाब मिल गया होगा. So thank you, Dr. Madan Thangavelu sir. आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. हमारे साथ आप सभी का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद जुड़ने के लिए. और हम फिर किसी और मेहमान के साथ इस आयुष दर्पण के इस प्लेटफॉर्म पर आएंगे और आपका ज्ञान वर्धन करेंगे. We hope that this is a very beautiful session, 2-hour session, lot of information, lot of knowledge we got from this session. It's amazing session. Yeah, really it's amazing session. It is live on YouTube as well as the Facebook channel page of the Ayush Darpan Journal. So thank you sir. हम फिर दोबारा